Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a massive historical showdown. I'm talking about the epic battle of man versus nature, and specifically how the entire field of geography used to view this relationship. We're looking at a concept that honestly didn't just sit quietly in academic textbooks. No, this was a massive framework. It shaped how entire generations understood the world. It drove global politics, influenced empire building, and literally dictated how humans categorized each other based on nothing about where they happened to live.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to think about your daily choices for just a second. The food you eat, the way your local economy works, even your own psychological behavior and routines. Think about why Mediterranean cultures historically prioritize the midday siesta, or why Scandinavian societies are built around such strict communal infrastructure. Are those cultural traits shaped by the ingenuity and active choices of you and your community? Or are they actually forced upon you by your local weather and geography? Well, for a long time, the leading scholars of the world believed it was absolutely the latter. They believed you had essentially zero say in the matter.
Section 1. Defining environmental determinism, or the environment as master paradigm. Let's establish this old mindset where nature was completely in charge.
So, environmental determinism is the theory that the physical environment, specifically things like climate, topography, and natural resources, primarily determines human culture, social development, and even psychological behavior. Now, I really want to emphasize the sheer weight of this concept. It means believing that the fundamental temperament of your entire nation, the complexity of your laws, your social mores, all of it was programmed by the average annual rainfall and the elevation of your terrain. And this wasn't just some fringe idea or a passing fad. This was literally the dominant central school of thought in geography for decades. It was widely accepted as objective science. The core logic of this theory is just incredibly stark. It frames the environment as the absolute, unquestionable master. Under strict environmental determinism, humans are viewed entirely as passive subjects. To put it into perspective, it's like imagining humanity as clay and the physical environment as the hands of the potter. If you live in a rugged, mountainous terrain, the theory dictates that your society must naturally develop an isolated, rugged, or aggressive culture. You aren't actively building a society based on human innovation, cooperation, or trade. Rather, the physical world is dictating the terms from the ground up. The societal structures are entirely forced upon you by your surroundings.
Section 2. Climate and human character, mapping geography to behavior. Let's explore how early geographers actually applied this abstract theory to human behavior. Back in the late 19th century, environmental determinism took an absolute iron grip on the field of geography. During this era, the scientific community was eagerly searching for grand unifying laws to explain human society. Kind of like how Darwin had just revolutionized biology. Determinism felt like this perfect, neat scientific box, and it dominated the academic conversation right through the early 20th century. But as the world modernized and social sciences evolved, this incredibly strict view faced a massive wave of rejection. By the mid to late 20th century, modern geographers heavily criticized and largely abandoned the theory altogether. They realized human society was just way too complex for such rigid environmental rules. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the specific people who drove this idea forward. This framework didn't just appear out of thin air. It was heavily championed by a German geographer named Friedrich Ratzel and then widely popularized in the English-speaking world by Ellsworth Huntington. These guys published widely read texts that educated entire generations of students. They were at the absolute forefront of this movement, and they took the theory to its absolute extreme by explicitly linking specific global climate types directly to the psychological behavior and even the perceived intelligence of entire populations. Historical proponents like Ratzel and Huntington argued that temperate weather, the distinct changing seasons found in places like Europe and North America, produced more energetic, quote-unquote, civilized societies. Their logic was that surviving harsh winters required intense forward planning and agricultural innovation, which they claimed built intellectual superiority. Conversely, they claimed that tropical climates inherently led to lethargy in populations. Yep, they actually argued that. Because the tropics lacked harsh winters, the supposedly easy year-round warmth didn't require forward planning, leading to a natural laziness. They assigned these very specific stark labels to different global climates, arguing definitively that your local weather dictated your collective character. Section 3. The ethnocentric fallacy, the dark side of the theory. Here's the plot twist where the theory's logic completely breaks down. The dismantling of this theory reveals exactly why it is viewed so critically today. Modern scholarship has thoroughly debunked environmental determinism for its blatant ethnocentrism. I mean, think about it. European scholars who conveniently lived in temperate zones miraculously concluded that temperate zones biologically produce the best and most civilized humans. This geographical concept was absolutely weaponized on a global scale. Because the theory claimed that certain groups were naturally superior based on their geographic origins, it provided a pseudo-scientific justification for colonialism. The argument was essentially that people in tropical climates were naturally incapable of developing advanced societies on their own due to their environment, and therefore they supposedly required outside intervention and management from temperate nations. It was, quite literally, an intellectual tool used directly to validate historical conquests and promote severe racial prejudices. Section 4. The shift to possibilism, humans as choosers. Time for an empowering resolution to this narrative conflict.
So the crucial point is this counter-theory that eventually replaced determinism, possibilism. This modern framework suggests that, yes, the physical environment absolutely sets certain constraints. You can't exactly start a traditional wheat farm in the middle of a frozen tundra, and you can't naturally build a sprawling city in a dry desert without water. But ultimately, human culture is determined by the social choices and the technological capabilities of the humans themselves. Technology acts as the bridge. We build intricate irrigation systems to turn arid deserts into massive agricultural hubs. We use global trade networks to sustain thriving populations on rocky, isolated islands. Under possibilism, humanity actually has agency. And this brilliantly illustrates the entire paradigm shift we've been talking about today. It's a complete transformation in how we view our place on Earth. Under the old guard of environmental determinism, the environment is the absolute master and humans are totally passive subjects, molded entirely by the rain and the dirt. But under the modern view of possibilism, the environment is really just a constraint, kind of like a game board with a specific set of rules. Humans are active choosers, capable of creatively overcoming those environmental constraints through innovation, engineering, and complex social organization.
I want to leave you with a thought to chew on as you go about your day. Look around at your own city's infrastructure, your local economy, and your community through this empowering lens of possibilism. How much does your physical environment currently limit your technological or social choices today? And more importantly, how are you and your society actively choosing to overcome those constraints to build the world you want to live in? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions and keep learning.